Alright, when you're waxing leather, wax hardening leather, what you are going to need, you of course need wax. This is just a paraffin wax slab from the hobby store, Hobby Lobby, Michael, something like that. If you do not have that available, you could melt down regular candles or even use beeswax. If you melt down candles, I would do unscented and I would do white only, just to keep everything the same color. You need a big serrated knife for cutting your wax, and I just cut it off in chunks and throw it in the pot. My pot of wax that I use, this pot is dedicated for my wax, and it has a lid. This one happens to be a pressure cooker. It doesn't have to be a pressure cooker. That's just what I picked up at the Goodwill store, so it was cheap. But when I'm done, the lid goes on it, and it goes in my garage with the lid on it. I don't have to worry about contaminants getting in it. A bottle maybe for shaping. This is a regular 750 milliliter wine bottle. If you have bigger arms, like we do when we shape our arms, you might want to do a 1.5 liter bottle. Of course, you're going to need the armor that you're going to be working with. Various hooks for dipping and pulling, a stir stick, and then a rag for buffing. And a towel for laying everything on so you don't get your countertops or whatever you're working with dirty. Wax hardening leather. We're going to start with a half gauntlet. This is 8-ounce leather. Wax hardened, it should be rigid protection. We are going to hope to accomplish that today. Our first step, we have our wax melted in a pot on the stove. You should never use direct flame to melt wax because it has a very low flash point and could actually catch on fire. So we are going to immerse. Let's see if we can get the camera up here as we do it. We're actually looking for, I don't know if you can see the bubbles coming out. The bubbles is air being pushed out as the wax goes in. So the more bubbles we get, the harder it's going to get. Too hard and it will also cause some shrinkage. So we're not going to wait for all the bubbles to go away, but a good percentage of them. Pull it out. One of the secrets is while it is still wet, before the wax hardens, I'm going to bring it over here on a towel. You want it to keep the shape. So this one has a snap to help shape it. So we're going to go ahead and get it snapped and get our shape that we want it to be in, because that's the shape it's going to hold. And now we just set it over the side and let it dry and buff the excess wax off, and it should be hardened. We'll give this one time to cool off and then we'll check it. Alright, we're about to do a Bazabon now. Now this piece is larger, won't fit in the pot by itself in one dipping, so we are going to have to dunk it 2 or 3 times. It's no different. I'm just going to show that technique. One of the things I did want to mention is, if you notice, it is already dyed. You want to dye your leather before you wax harden it, because dye fills up the pores just like the wax does. So the dye is not going to work if the pores are already sealed. One thing I want to show you, I have 2 Bazabons here. I want to show you the edges of them, and that they are roughly the same thickness, as close as the same ounce leather can get. Now we're going to dunk one of them, let it dry, and then we're going to compare them again so you can see the effect of the wax hardening.
And these are Vazirons as opposed to Van braces because
Vazirons is actually a piece of armor that includes forearm and elbow together. I do not know the full history of them, but I've seen leather ones and I've seen metal ones, so I don't know which would be true, period. And we dunk. I'm just getting as much of it in as I can to begin with. I don't care if I get the straps, because we actually want the straps to be able to bend and wrap around, so it's okay if they stay flexible. See how I can get it in. I may stick. Have to do it a third time on this side that's not in yet.
So is this challenging because it's because of the size, or because of the number of pieces of leather that have to be used for creating it?
Size for me. A bigger pot would make it easier. I just use what was handy for me. I keep the pot when it's cooled. The wax is still, it stays in the pot. So I'm gonna bring it over here. Remember, we want to keep our shape, so what I'm actually going to do is buckle the straps. Which the buckles are a little hot. Just one buckle. Let me throw a wine bottle in there. And this is going to help us keep our shape, because when this is all hard, the more you bend it, the faster the wax is going to break down, the faster it's going to get soft. Alright, so let's let that dry. Alright, so now this one has cooled and hardened up nicely. As you can tell, it is definitely not as floppy as it was when we started. So now we've got a lot of excess wax that we're going to buff off, and I just have an old t-shirt, you know, just your old shop rags. And then as you buff it off, you're going to see it comes out to a nice shine. It almost looks like plastic, and it's about that rigid too. I don't do the inside that much. Most of the time it's rough anyway. I just want to knock the high spots off of it keep it from shedding on things. And when we're done, we have a half gauntlet. Hard as plastic, pretty and shiny like plastic, period leather, period techniques. All right, this is the second dip on the first Bazabon. If you look, it is the bubbles are just starting to happen right now. It's been in the wax about 30-45 seconds, and it takes a moment for the bubbles to start on the second dip because it has to melt the wax that's already in the pores. But you can see we're starting to get good action on it now. Again, as you see, we first dip it in and there's no bubbles. It's going to take a minute and the bubbles will slowly start to build as the wax melts. Now, there are all kind of reasons why you might want to do a second dip. If you do it the first time and it didn't quite get hard enough for your liking, you can try it again and hopefully it becomes harder. Which, as long as there's bubbles coming out, there's more wax going in, and you should be fine. It should actually work. The other thing is when you use this armor, as you flex it, it will actually break down the wax and become soft again. So this is one of the straps that we did, and this is what I want to show you. So as you bend it, I don't know if you can see the cracks forming in the wax. Those cracks become soft. That's what makes it soft again. And then once it becomes soft again, on your rigid pieces, you have to actually re-wax them and make it all solid wax again. So that's another reason why. So you will periodically have to go back and re-wax them. My suggestion is, in the care and maintenance of your armor, you try to keep them in as rigid a state as possible. Don't try to flex them too much to make them last as long as possible.
What are you using as a gauge of when enough's enough to change it to the next one?
I'm just basically trying to watch my bubbles. If you lose all your bubbles, then you have a possibility of burning your leather and it becoming crisp and brittle. So I'm trying not to lose all the bubbles, but when I start noticing the bubbles, there's less bubbles, that's when I either switch it over or pull it out. So there's no hard and fast rule for me. I think every time I do it, I learn a little bit. Buckle's hot. Thing's hot. So this is before and this is after. This one is definitely hard, this one is still very soft. If you can see the differences in the thicknesses now, it is thicker on the left, partly because the pores have expanded as they filled with wax, and partly because as it fills up it shrinks, and that material, the leather has to go somewhere, so it gets thicker. But that is what gives you your rigid protection. And now it's time to dunk the second one.